makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part.
Internet censorship has run amok, both against the left and against the right. And in this video, I'm going to show some examples of censorship that have happened over the past week and some possible solutions, because obviously this discussion is blighted by, ideological and partisan affections. So it is very common for left-wingers to not really care much when right-wing channels are censored, in the same way that right-wingers don't really care, despite all the time talking about how they defend free speech and they're against cancel culture. They don't really care when a left-wing channel is cancelled. So the first example was a very well-known right-wing watchdog called Right Wing Watch. It's a very good site. I strongly recommend people follow them on Twitter. Basically, their role is to expose kind of this new generation of alt-right, alt-light extremism in the media and in social media, etc. And, well, they were banned on, what was this, June 28th by YouTube for apparently breaching or violating their community guidelines. And their entire channel was removed, and the offending videos apparently also deleted. Now, here's the thing. Obviously, if this is a channel that will present right-wing content that may have been banned, like the original videos may have been banned, then it's obvious that the algorithm, whatever YouTube's algorithm, however it works, will catch on the fact that this channel is also showing the exact same videos that may have been banned, without really understanding, because obviously this is the algorithm is AI, will not understand that it was actually done in criticism or in exposing this extremism rather than promoting it. Now, obviously, one cannot expect YouTube to be able to police its entire content, which is something like billions of hours are uploaded to YouTube every single day. So it's impossible for human beings to actually be able to police all of this. So to some extent, the algorithm is kind of necessary given the size of YouTube. But it's the appeals process that is problematic, because the problem here is that Right Wing Watch subsequently appealed, and when you appeal on YouTube, well, thankfully that I'm a new channel. This hasn't happened yet. But if the process is similar to like a copyright violation, which I have received on a small number of occasions, when you upload a video, if a part of your content has possible copyright claim, it'll notify you even before you can upload it. It'll give you a notification that it has a copyright violation and that it won't monetize that video, which is fine by me right now because my channel is still too small to be monetized. But then it gives you the option of you can either trim that bit from the video, or I guess you can remake it, re-upload it, etc. But it warned you, right? So, and you're allowed to appeal. And I've done that before. I've had a video that was flagged for a copyright violation, and obviously it was done as part of commentary and reaction to it, which is legal under fair use. So I appealed to it, and the appeal was approved. But one would assume that the appeals process is handled by humans, but it's clear that that's not the case, because in this case, YouTube responded that, thank you for your account suspension appeal. We have decided to keep your account suspended based on our community guidelines and terms of service. This probably was not seen by a human being, because no one who would have seen Right Wing Watch, their content, would have remotely concluded that it was propagandizing right-wing extremism. So it's clear that the appeals process is also done by AI, not by humans, and that is very problematic, because the good news is, well, Right Wing Watch was eventually reinstated on YouTube. YouTube apologized. And this was really only done not because of the goodness of their heart, but because Right Wing Watch is a very well-known channel. It has 300,000 Twitter followers. Its suspension was on the news on almost every left-wing site 2 days ago. So with that amount of volume, with that amount of, obviously, YouTube's Twitter handle was being constantly flagged. So they responded because they kind of had to. And that's a luxury that big channels like Right Wing Watch will have. But smaller channels, if tomorrow this happens to me, I will not have 300,000 Twitter followers to start tweeting against YouTube. So it favors the big channels, but it doesn't favor the small ones. And God knows how many small channels are suspended or deleted every day. Even if it's like harmless reaction videos or, they're actually producing content similar to Right Wing Watch. So it's really unfair. It favors the large channels at the expense of the smaller ones. Of course, the problem is not just on the left. Bret Weinstein, a notable member of the so-called intellectual dark web, and a former self-described Bernie supporter that suddenly went right-wing after an incident he was a professor at Evergreen College, and he was cancelled by students. And he's basically been in the kind of right-wing echo chamber since, hanging out with Jordan Peterson, Ben Shapiro, those kind of people. Apparently YouTube demonetized his Dark Horse podcast, wiping out more than half our family income. That means he doesn't work. Basically, his wife works. Anyway, to be honest, I don't like Bret Weinstein. To be honest, I think he's a bit of a fraud. He's a bit pathetic, to be honest. He once testified in the U.S. Congress and spoke about the intellectual dark web as like a group of brave intellectuals standing up against intellectual dishonesty by the left, and he's sad. But among these right wingers, I think he's relatively harmless. I don't think he's really far right, to be honest. So again, another case, and the reason that he was demonetized apparently was because he was discussing a controversial new, not new. The drug isn't new, but there's a new drug that is being discussed in certain circles as potentially being very effective against COVID. And to be honest, I reviewed the evidence, and it doesn't seem like it's the miracle cure that a lot of people are thinking that it is. So YouTube has been very aggressive in apparently shutting down videos that are promoting this drug, which I'm not going to name because I don't want this video to be shut down. So I'm self-censoring myself. But it starts with an I, and you can feel free to Google it. And if you do, I strongly recommend you also look at a recent Lancet article about it, which shows that there's no demonstrative. There's some suspicions that it might be effective, but it's certainly not the miracle drug that some people are trying to push it. And the reason why it's being censored is because it's sort of, I suspect YouTube is worried that it's going to be another hydrochloroquine. Back in 2020, there was that drug that Trump used to promote and was apparently not very effective. So even then, I don't think that that's a reason why a video should be demonetized or censored. I do think that, especially on issues where the science isn't that clear, YouTube or any other social media company should wait until there is a bit more evidence to know whether it is in fact just another conspiracy theory or in fact whether there's something to it. And the big example of this is the lab leaks theory on COVID, which a year ago, any suspicion that COVID was man-made was essentially a conspiracy theory. And it probably could have gotten you banned on YouTube as well. And now, since a number of prominent politicians and scientists have come up and said that there is some plausibility in the lab leak theory, now it's suddenly okay to talk about it. And I think, we need to get, like, there are conspiracy theories that are ridiculous off the bat. But other things, we simply don't have enough information at that moment to definitively say that this is wrong. And again, there are now trials on this new drug that are being undertaken in numerous countries, including the UK, I believe, to see if indeed it is effective or not. And I think until we reach the point where these trials can actually say definitively, you know what, it really isn't that effective. Maybe it kind of is a bit, but not really the miracle drug that many people are painting it to be. Until then, we really should allow these kind of discussions to take place. And another person on the right also got censored, Andy Ngo, a notorious Antifa infiltrator. He's basically the anti-Antifa, and so because Antifa is anti-fascist, he kind of is fascist. I'll be honest, I genuinely think Andy Ngo is a piece of shit. Just an absolute scumbag. And I have nothing positive to say about Andy Ngo. If he disappeared off the face of the earth tomorrow, I would not care at all. But I want to present his case, not because I feel any sympathy for it, not because I actually don't know why he was banned by SoundCloud. This is not YouTube anymore. This is SoundCloud. His podcast known, You Should Know. Nice pun. Claimed he violated its community guidelines without naming the alleged offending content. So this is very problematic as well, because like with sometimes there's so little transparency in what you did wrong when these channels get banned or whatever, that it's so arbitrary, so opaque. And there's no consideration of, like, even when you appeal, that this was what case. There's no like a legal process, you know what I mean, like where you can offer your evidence and then they write back to you saying, oh well, this point you're right, but this one you're not, and blah blah blah. No, it's just like, yeah, you appealed, but like the letter here, this one, like, that's it. That's the response. That's the only thing that they're entitled to really give you, if at all. So you have no power, and so I don't know what he did or what he spoke about that got him banned. But the reason that I'm bringing up Andy Ngo is there's a slight difference between the podcast universe and the video universe, so YouTube, where YouTube is basically a monopoly. Yes, there are some alternative video streaming sites, whatever, but to be honest, like, none of them come close to YouTube in terms of the amount of people who watch them, their market share, etc. So getting banned from YouTube is basically silencing you. It's silencing you from appearing in any kind of visual way on the internet. Whereas the podcast universe is not a monopoly. There are many alternatives. SoundCloud is just one of them. You can go on Apple. You can use Spotify. There's plenty. It's not, like I said, it's not a monopoly. So apparently SoundCloud reversed this decision. But then what I really want to point out here is Andy Ngo's response, which is, he demands to know that blah, blah, blah. But this last point, I will be deleting my paid SoundCloud subscription and will take my content off your platform. This is the only reason that he has the power to do this, is because there are alternatives. Because, like I said, podcasting is not a monopoly. So this is something that, if you have enough high-profile figures who might sympathize with Andy Ngo or whatever, they can take their podcast and move them somewhere else. And then suddenly SoundCloud gets a very bad PR hit, and will lose market share versus its competitors. This does not apply to YouTube in any way, because YouTube is a monopoly. You cannot threaten YouTube. Oh, well, guess what? I'm leaving your platform. That is basically you deciding to self-disappear. So that is the power that these companies have. And to some extent, you have to, it's very damaging, because I think people at some point will be afraid to speak about issues that I don't think really deserve to be censored. And like I said, the fact that I myself am self-censoring in this video, not actually giving the name of this drug that I'm mentioning, is indicative of this. So there, how do we respond to this? This is I think the main issue. How do we deal with social media censorship? And I don't think there's an easy solution. I think the obvious one is the big companies need to be broken up. They need to, and there needs to be competition, because whenever you have a platform from a big tech monopoly, which is essentially a conglomerate, YouTube is owned by Google, but Google does many things aside from streaming videos. And in fact, I'm not sure that YouTube is the main revenue generator for Google. So to some extent, it doesn't really matter for Google if YouTube would suffer any losses or any reputational losses. And it's also very hard to compete against YouTube, because even if YouTube is not making much money and you can make a competing platform, Google will use all its resources from all its other activities into propping YouTube up if it needed to. So you can't win. You basically can't win. And the evidence of this is that whenever these social media companies fight each other, the incumbent almost always wins. So remember when Google tried to challenge Facebook with, what was it, Google Plus, and failed miserably? Ask Facebook whether Facebook videos are doing particularly well compared to YouTube. They're not. So the incumbent has so much power. The barriers to entry are so huge that really what you need to do is break them up. And you need to make something like YouTube a separate company independent of Google, so that then it cannot bank on Google's financial revenues to prop itself up, and will need to be competitive, and will need to basically allow some degree of market opening. That is one thing, but I don't think that's the only solution. The other solution is that these are still essentially private companies that tie you into their terms of service, and you really have no resource or recourse rather to do anything to fight them. So in this sense, we really need some sort of state intervention in which there is a more transparent appeals process. And this could take the form of some kind of independent social media watchdog or whatever, maybe even internationally, like an international organization designed to be a watchdog for social media companies, and where you can actually appeal. Because let's be honest, these are public platforms now. The state cannot ban you from speaking on the street, for example. They could, maybe they can ban you from speaking at one street corner, right? Because for whatever reason that street corner is reserved for some other use, but they cannot ban you from speaking. And so here we have platforms which are used by people around the world, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, etc. These are public forums, and you need, just as in real life, if this government banned you from speaking at a street corner, you would have some form of legal recourse. You have laws that will determine whether you have a case to be able to speak again. But with these companies, you don't, because they're private. You have to accept their terms of service. If not, then you're not going to be there. And I see, sadly, a lot of leftists who use the excuse, well, whenever a right-wing channel gets banned, they will use the excuse, well, it's a private company, they have the right to do whatever they want. And I don't think leftists should be using this excuse at all, because it essentially reinforces the anti-democratic nature of capitalist firms, and it really just shuts down any discussion of and it's a harder discussion. It's not an easy one. I'm not saying that I have the solution to it. I'm sure there are people who have studied this more than I have. A solution so that we can properly democratize social media, and by democratizing, I don't mean just in this very superficial, in which we all can speak our minds in some way. Democracy also involves your power as an individual or as a group to challenge authority through legal means. That is the most important thing. And insofar as you don't have a formalized democratic appeals process to any decision that a social media company can do, you will always be subject to their whims. So that's really the gist of it. And like I said, I don't like Andy Ngo in any way, but I'm kind of glad that he, whether this was Andy Ngo or anyone else, that he is using the fact that he has some degree of market power in the podcast sphere to be able to do this, to say that, hey, fuck you, I'm going somewhere else, and they'll be happy to host me. Recourses that Bret Weinstein or Right Wing Watch didn't have. So, and I also, this bothers me a bit because it puts me on the side to some extent of idiots like Glenn Greenwald, who I fucking hate. And he's been using this as well. He's been capitalizing on these bannings to, I mean, just look at this tweet. Congratulations once again to all the liberals and leftists. So he's lumping liberals and leftists as if everyone left of center was a firm proponent of canceling other channels. And that's factually not true. Like, if, like, real leftists are not in favor of canceling or of using this excuse of call it private companies, they can do whatever they want. Like real, when I'm talking about real leftists, I mean like socialists are not arguing for this. In fact, socialists are arguing for either nationalizing these companies or also having some sort of democratic control over whether it's international or national, whatever. But yeah, congratulations again to all the liberals and left by journalists who urge censorship of Can he name one who's like actively urging censorship? I don't think. I mean, indirectly, by the fact that you're maybe not complaining when your opponent is getting canceled, yes, but this is a very loaded statement. This is like they're actively urging censorship by Silicon Valley monopolists based in the belief that it would only be used to silence your adversaries and enemies, but never your allies. And again, liberals, yes, they don't really care. But Glenn Greenwald now lumps anyone left of center as just liberals or left interchangeably, because he doesn't want to associate with them in any way. And then his comment on Bret Weinstein is also pretty stupid. It's like, the internet could have been and still could be the most important advice in the last 100 years for liberating and empowering humans. Those who have done most to harm and weaken it are those who demanded centralized corporate and state power censor its political speech. Does he not understand how markets work and how, like, the lack of regulation essentially inevitably led the internet to becoming controlled by corporations? Of course he does. He's a fucking civil rights libertarian. He's a libertarian. He's not a left-wing on economic matters. You will never see Glenn Greenwald like pushing left-wing economic views on Twitter, because he's not. He's not a leftist. So how blind can you be to the functioning of deregulated markets that you couldn't see this coming? But he's somehow, who's he blaming here? He's clearly blaming again the leftists and liberals, as if there was an active role in these people, in these corporations becoming the massive monopolies that they ended up becoming, and not in fact the market, which he does not have a critique for. So yeah, that is Glenn Greenwald, and it pains me to side with him, at least partially, at least in terms of the complaint against censorship with people like him. But I think leftists need to make a different case. Even if you're siding with idiots like Greenwald on this, the case needs to be made different, and it needs to be it needs to include the economic argument of being fundamentally against monopolies, which I mentioned that was one of the two things that needed to be done, as well as in some sort of state-led or international state-led approach to democratizing these companies, or at the very least, their appeals process. So there you go. I hope my channel doesn't get censored or banned or demonetized once I reach 1,000 subscribers. But by the way, most political channels are very heavily demonetized, and I've seen this because I have seen some videos of major leftist content creators, and they've actually shown like the videos, the screen that you get on YouTube Studio, which shows your videos and their monetary condition, so to speak, and most of them are actually demonetized because most advertisers don't want to be seen in a video that deals with touchy subjects. So for example, if I make a video of anti-Semitism or something that is potentially controversial, even if I'm speaking in in sort of a non-hate way, like my video is against anti-Semitism, even then a lot of companies don't want to be associated with any video that deals with anti-Semitism, or which might have, for example, if I'm making a video on anti-Semitism and it shows a picture of graves that have been spray painted with a swastika, they don't want to be associated with a video like that. So most left-wing political videos end up being demonetized, and that's why often it's other sources of income like Patreon, etc., that these people rely on. So if you really want to challenge authority and make money doing it, YouTube is probably not the way to do it. So yeah, that's the sad state of affairs. On that note, please like, please share. Most importantly, please subscribe so that one day I will be able to monetize this channel and still get demonetized for all my political videos. Thank you very much.